What's up everyone, Enel here. With 2 days left until the launch of Golden Country, we still got a lot of blades to talk about in this tier list. As per usual, I encourage you to watch the other parts to understand this video more and how the blades are being ranked. The blades today are all strong blades with many strong qualities and are definitely worth using. We're going to be continuing with the B tier blades, which basically signifies that these blades are solid picks for a team setup or are strong in a few specific purposes. Regardless, we're getting into the tier of blades where it's getting much harder to find negative things to say about them, and the only reason they may not be in the top 10 is because we just have that many great blades after all the DLC has been released. Remember that this list is more aimed towards post-game as well. So let's jump right into the next part of this list and get started with blade number 20. At number 20, we have the first of the 3 Marquis Torna blades and one of the coolest characters in the game, Akos. Instantly after getting him, you will quickly realize that his sheer damage output as a healer class, along with the ability to easily fully heal the entire party on every driver with a powerful ratio damaging art, makes him one of the best healers out there. Unlike many of the healers ranked below him, Akos can deal damage similar to, or even higher than many offensive blades. His transmigration ability will flip enemy defense values, and what this means is that if an enemy has an ether defense of 30, this ability will change that value to negative 30, which means with his powerful high ratio arts and specials, he'll regularly be hitting enemies extremely hard. His level 2 special is another positive because of the strong damage effect on it, and since he also gets increased recharge boost by canceling into his specials, you'll be able to use these specials in his other specials much more often. He has access to a topple and launch art depending on who you put him on, and his damage is very solid with 3 aux core slots and the ability to flip enemy defenses. His main weaknesses as a blade are that his arts are very high cooldown compared to the typical axe arts, which means he cannot use them as much, and the fact that Dead Zone isn't really much of a useful ability given how he can easily heal the party with a single art. And while he can flip enemy defenses, his low hit count specials makes him not the optimal choice for chain attacking, and if you're looking for pure raw damage output, there are still plenty of blades better. Regardless, Akos is serviceable against many enemies and becomes even stronger the more defense those enemies have. At number 19, we get to another healer and finally another knuckle class blade. Adenine is a great example of a blade with a very strong support effect, but outside of that her combat capabilities are pretty weak and outclassed by other options. So let's talk about what she can do first of all. Her main perk is that with Battle Wisdom she can effectively double all damage done against enemies when you're hitting their elemental weakness. Since you'll likely be using her as support for this and your main controlled character will be the one who is hitting the elemental weakness, this can lead to a lot of extra damage against enemies. This also works in chain attacks to allow for far easier damage cap hits without burst symbols or fusion combos. Having a way to effectively double the damage of party members is very valuable. The only restrictions on this is that the element of the blade used has to be a weakness. This means only Numa or Cutie Pie can really take major advantage of this against a wide range of enemies. Adenine also gets the same access to driver combo coverage depending on the driver, and has a pretty good crit rate and skill set to do a decent amount of damage. Specials 2 and 4 will additionally go through guard rate of enemies. However, outside of this, she isn't too great. Her actual healing is probably the worst of every healer blade, only offering potion arts and element wisdom and treasure wisdom are not really useful abilities for her to have as far as battling skill. Her lower hit count specials and lack of additives make her kind of weak if not against wind weak enemies. And one other issue with her is that she's pretty outclassed by Patroka in almost every way, who offers the exact same ability to hit element weaknesses hard. This means you likely won't be using Adenine unless you're also using Patroka. Regardless, Adenine is still a blade with a strong niche use, and that's why she's easily top 20. The next blade is also a knuckle class blade and the last one on this list. Nem is pretty good as a healer since she'll heal the party every time she contributes to a fusion combo, which is a driver combo and a blade combo at the same time. As per usual with the knuckle class blades, she has great ratios and fast animations on her arts, along with good driver combo coverage. She'll additionally do extra damage to beast enemies, which is a relatively common enemy type, which means that her damage output in some scenarios is the highest of all the knuckle blades. As a knuckle healer, her level 1 and 3 specials will also restore HP to the entire party, which can be nice. The biggest positive about Nim, though, is Synthesis Lore. This ability will increase the effect of all fusion combos by 50%. This means any driver combo she contributes to will increase the duration of blade combos quite a bit, and any blade combo applied to a driver combo by her will boost all damage more than any blade without this ability. Since Nim is an Earth Blade, she can also lead into Volcano, which is the highest damage over time effect in the game. You can easily make damage capped DOTs with this, and it is the primary way for killing large HP enemies on challenge mode such as Ken. Her weaknesses as a blade are her specials being relatively slow and low hit count, which can make timing the fusion combos hard and aren't too useful for chain attacks. In Ultimate Combo, common blades can also take away her fusion combo niche. And her damage is probably among the weakest of the blades in the top 20, so she's primarily strong as a support blade. If you plan on using fusion combos a lot, Nim is a very strong blade to use. Coming in at 17th, we get to McHale, probably the only actual human on this list unless you also count Homs as humans. Regardless, McHale can still function well as a blade, and despite not having any sources of damage on his skill tree, he has the 3rd highest DPS of all tank class blades in the game, actually tying characters like Vale and Pyra in total DPS. The reason for this is likely his very high ratios, art animations, art effects, and cooldowns with his weapons on drivers like Rex. His level 3 special also has a very powerful damaging effect on it, and he has 3 aux core slots, so his damage definitely is not lacking. The ring class always had a lot of potential as a weapon, and he's the first example of it being a very strong clone. With his damage, he should have no problem pulling aggro. As an actual tank, he has a lot of tools to make him a very strong option there as well. He gets a flat 45% evasion buff at max affinity, and if you stack agility on this character, you can easily become nearly unhittable, especially combined with party auras like Shulk and Mithra. If enemies cannot hit you, then they cannot reduce aggro on him by dealing damage, and as such, keeping aggro will be even easier. Blowdown has a great effect to inflict on enemies who attack him, preventing them from basically doing anything for like 5 to 10 seconds. Dimensional Fold also means in challenge mode he can take all aggro and likely evade everything easily. His main weaknesses as a blade are likely his single hit specials being absolutely terrible for chain attacks, and his low critical rate, which unfortunately cannot be fixed. Luckily, if he never gets hit, he doesn't have to worry about healing, and his damage is already high enough even with the low critical rate. He also doesn't get any driver combo access outside of a break guard on Nia, which may not be the best choice for him. Overall, McHale is a very well-rounded tank blade, and one of the best options of the class to consider using thanks to his high evasion and strong damage, and a particularly good option for Bringer of Chaos since not getting hit is one of the best strategies for that difficulty. At number 16, we have the king of the speedrun, Wulfric. Unfortunately for Wulfric, despite being extremely strong in the base game story, he falls off a bit when you start maxing out all of the blades. But as a blade, Wulfric is still extremely strong and the best lance who isn't a clone. He is one of the only blades to get a critical damage effect on his skill tree, which is an independent multiplier to most additive sources of damage, and he also gets an unconditional 100% additive damage at max affinity. This gives him some of the strongest damage in the game when combined with his 50% critical rate with the Moon Matter Courtship. He also gets a lot of additional damage to toppled and launched enemies, and his level 4 special has a critical damage effect as well, which can be used on a toppled enemy to a crazy high amount of damage, and this is often used to instant kill most bosses in the speedrun of the game, and it's still very effective even into post-game. He has one of the better hit count level 1s, and also a strong piercing level 2, and a 14 hit level 3, which makes him a decent option for chain attacking as well. As a lance, he has access to a break guard on Rex and a smash guard on Morag, which can also be pretty useful. The main negatives against him would involve Lance typically not being the greatest offensive weapon as a kit thanks to having arts having longer cooldowns and it being weaker than the other attack class weapons as a whole. His defenses are basically the lowest in the game, so getting hit can be very dangerous for him. And perhaps the biggest negative, Patroka basically outclasses him in 80% of scenarios as a blade, and she shares the same element and general weapon type. Regardless of all of that though, Wulfric is a very strong damage blade with top 10 DPS potential with decent chain attack potential and a very strong level 4. At number 15, we have one of the strongest damage output blades in the game, Shinobia. And I'm sure her being this low could come as a shock to many people watching, but to be honest, pretty much every blade from here on out is very good. Shinobia has some of the highest damage in the game with her easy to satisfy additive damage sources, great weapon type for high damage art spam, and critical damage as an effect on her weapon. Her level 3 special is extremely strong as well since it pierces enemy defense and gets an additional 100% damage to higher level enemies. This gives her some strong AoE and mob fights with this, along with Berserker Slash, and her extra damage will make clearing them even easier. Her damage being this high and easy to satisfy makes her easily one of the top 5 to 10 DPS blades in the game. She gets access to Topple as well as a Topple Art plus Art Zeke for even more damage potential. But that being said, the main reason she isn't higher has a lot to do with her chain attack strength and the existence of 2 other axe blades. Her specials being lower hit count unfortunately makes her not a strong choice for chain attacking, and on normal mode this is typically the fastest strategy against a lot of enemies. Her high damage cannot escape the reality of the damage cap limiting her potential greatly, and being bad in chain attacks unfortunately is one of the worst things for a high damaging attack blade. And while this isn't an issue on Bringer of Chaos, she still has a lot of competition as an axe and as a damage blade with Telos and Dagas. Telos can reach even higher damage after meeting certain conditions, and multi-enemy fights is one of them. Telos is also much better for chain attacking and goes through enemy defense all the time. Against single enemies, Dagas only has 60% less additive damage than Xenobia, and offers us 120% additive to the entire party. As such, despite Xenobia's incredible damage making her a highly ranked and valuable blade, she still unfortunately has some issues that prevent her from breaking into the top tier. Number 14 is the final blade of B tier, Brigid. Before about 2 or 3 weeks ago, Brigid was pretty much the best blade in the tank class. She is the only tank class blade to get critical damage as an effect with Tachyon chip and has a stacking 250% additive damage with Warpire that increases the damage she deals every time she dodges an attack. Her evasion art is possibly the best in the game. The hit frame ends on a good time so it can cancel early, but the ending animation is very long so you can continue to evade if needed. In the wave format of challenge mode, against multiple enemies, or against certain super bosses that may attack many times in a short interval such as Ophion or Kuradil, she can easily stack her 250% additive damage, which is one of the strongest additive effects for a tank, and makes her damage easily overshadow most other blades of the class. She'll even outdamage most attack blades after it stacks up. She can easily get aggro because of this as well. Her other offensive utility comes in the form of her high hit count specials that can be useful on multi-stacked fusion combo chain attacks. Her level 4 special is also really powerful with a great damaging effect. As far as her tanking utility, she gets a flat 90% evasion of all ranged attacks. This ability can let her hard counter certain enemies such as Ophion who rely on projectiles. She additionally gets strong evasion when she falls under a certain HP threshold, and combined with evasion auras and judgment, she can be nearly unhittable. She has pretty decent AoE with Blaze and Heat Haze, and all around she has a very solid tank class blade, and the blade I've always fell back on when I've experienced initial difficulties in this game, such as the first time I played challenge mode before making specific strategies. However, she does have some weaknesses as a blade. The most glaringly apparent, and the one that makes her not too useful on AI, is that Warpire will completely reset on switch just like Veil's passive. Warpire also can't stack super efficiently against enemies that attack slower such as Ken. These two big limitations to Warpire can greatly hinder Brigid as a blade. Even with Tachyon chip and crit damage, she still needs Warpire to remain relevant as a damage blade, since other aspects of her kit do not do much to help her. Regardless, Brigid is a great blade and one of the best tanks in the entire game. At number 13, we finally get to the A tier blades. These blades are great blades that offer either great support or damage, or fill niches all around that make them optimal choices for many diverse situations. Every one of the remaining 13 blades is very good, and being lower ranked at this point doesn't mean quite as much just because all of them are solid choices for every team if you understand what their strengths and weaknesses are. The first of these blades is Crossette. After having the other 4 bit balls within the first 12 blades, we finally get to the last one, and boy is she much higher ranked than the others, and it's pretty obvious why. She has a very easy to stack 500% damage additive just from collecting potions, and this instantly makes her damage vastly superior to that of the other bit balls. Unlike the other bit balls, she can definitely take advantage of the pulverizing dunk spam with Zeke, and as with the other bit balls, she can easily fully heal the team with a low cooldown art like Shell Shot. She can even cap pulverizing dunk art spam, making her have some of the best art spam damage in the entire game in the right scenarios. In addition, she gets a very strong fusion combo bonus just like Nim, offering 60% as an effect, which is 10% stronger. This effect can make chain attacks very powerful if used on a driver combo, and also leading to powerful damage over time effects with Steam Bomb and Burnout. Additionally, she is a pretty decent blade for use in these chain attacks, thanks to her 7 hit level 1, which is one of the highest, and her 10 hit level 2, which is also one of the highest. Her last ability gives the entire party increased damage against launch enemies, which isn't the most useful, but it's still another tool to help the party. Her damage completely overshadows the other bit balls, and she has a lot of strong utility as a blade. Her weaknesses would be that her additive also resets when you swap her out, and bit balls are still somewhat of a weak weapon type. If you do swap her out, you can luckily collect potions easily to still stack it up again, but don't swap her during chain attacks either. Launch is admittedly not too useful, and she has no driver combo coverage outside of a break art on Nia, but overall Crossette is still a fantastic blade, and by far the best bit ball. At number 12, we get to Herald, who has traditionally been considered one of the more powerful blades. For the longest time, she was the queen of quick kill chain attacks with her 16 hit level 1 special that could cap all 16 hits thanks to the critical damage effect and Herald's high damage when at max affinity. This level 1 is easily the best in the game since it's one of the only 2 with more than 8 hits, and is the only one to very easily cap every hit and is useful against so many enemies on both normal and easy mode. Her 200% damage additive at max affinity and 3 aux core slots contributes to this as well as her total damage. Pretty much all the missions with a big super boss type enemy in challenge mode will use Herald in the speed kill. That's how valuable she is to chain attacking. Even outside of challenge mode, her strength in chain attacks is fantastic, but since the timer now runs until the chain attack is finished, she has fallen out of favor somewhat for better options that have faster specials. But this chain attack strength is easily her most powerful niche, and easily enough to make her one of the best blades. but outside of that, she still has a few strengths. She can sustain with auto attack damage if needed, and has a lot of damage on her arts and other specials because of her higher than average additive total. Her damage is solidly top 15 in the game, and her usefulness as one of the best offensive blades cannot be understated. However, she has fallen from grace a little bit and has a few glaring weaknesses. For one, the additional 30% damage she takes makes her one of the easiest blades to kill in the game. And on Bringer of Chaos, where damage is not only higher, but chain attacks are nerfed into the ground, she finds herself being a very weak blade, easy to kill, and without her biggest strength. She has some weaker AoE for her cannon blade, and her aggro reduction passive is mostly useless. Her ability to self-sustain doesn't matter much when she's so easy to one-shot. Outside of her chain attack niches, Herald isn't going to be the most effective offensive blade to use, but her strength and chain attacks on normal and easy mode is so valuable that it easily makes up for her shortcoming, and she is still firmly an A-tier blade. And just outside of the top 10, we get to a very strong blade who was just recently released in Corbin. Now, I'm sure many will wonder why he isn't higher given how extremely well-rounded he is, and to be honest, I would say his placement is the one I'm the least confident in. But at the same time, I think all 10 blades above him have solid reasons for being placed where they are. So allow me to explain. So Corbin is one of the best all-around blades in the entire game. He has the strongest damage for a tank blade with 150% damage additive at max affinity, 3 aux core slots, and incredibly powerful specials that have ridiculously high ratios compared to any other blades. These specials hurt a lot when used and can all easily be made to damage cap and chain attacks. He comes with some very strong AoE in his level 1 and 2, along with powerful evasion art on Zeke that can recharge in multi-enemy fights. He is one of the best in the game at clearing closer together mobs because of this, and is probably the hardest counter to the Alma mission since they will constantly be attacking him. He can heal his team if he needs to with his level 1, and he is the only blade who can purge in rage status with his level 2, which can definitely be helpful in some situations. And he also gives a smash art to every single driver, greatly helping Rex and Nia who did not have good options before. And we haven't even discussed his abilities as a tank yet. Thanks to his evasion art, level 3 granting a decoy effect, his evasion at max affinity passive, and high agility, he is one of the hardest blades to even hit in the game, and he can be paired with fellow light blades Shulk and Mithra to make an unhittable party. And if he does get hit, his defenses are incredibly high. His 60% critical rate is tied for the highest in the game, and he can easily fill up party meter because of this and his last battle skill. In multi-enemy fights, he can easily recharge his arts upon evading to spam as well. Corbin is definitely one of the strongest blades in the game, and there probably isn't a single situation he would not be useful for. He has hardly any weaknesses as a blade. The only negative things you can even say about him are that his specials are slow, which aren't the best for speed kills, and his level 4 kinda sucks doing less than his level 3. The only reason he is not ranked higher is that while he can do many things well, there isn't really anything he is exceptional at. His support is decent but not the strongest. His tanking ability is fantastic but not always needed. His damage is strong, but so are so many other blades in A and S rank. Some blades have higher AoE, some blades have more damage, and some blades just have faster and higher hit specials. Some blade can also infinitely evade all attacks just like Corbin. And while Corbin is a blade who can do many things well, usually it is better to excel in specific situations or offer very strong support rather than being a strong jack of all trades. As Bruce Lee once said, "I fear not the man who has practiced 10,000 kicks once, but I fear the man who has practiced one kick 10,000 times." Corbin is an excellent blade and someone I would recommend on any casual or less optimized teams. He truly has no real weaknesses as a blade, but when you understand how to optimize your setups, he may not always be the best option. So we've got the final video left for you guys tomorrow, where we'll discuss the last 10 blades. I'm sure it's pretty easy to deduce who these blades are by process of elimination, but I hope you'll tune in regardless to see the reasoning for each blade. I hope these videos have been a valuable resource for everyone, and tomorrow I'll release my last video before Golden Country. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to subscribe to my channel, like the video, and share with all your friends because it would make me very happy. And once again, I'd like to thank everyone who helped me work on this project. Links to all their stuff is going to be in the description, and the Discord is linked as well if you want to talk to any of us. If you have any input or disagree with this list, feel free to let me know in the comments. With all that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this video and learned something useful, and I hope you all have a fantastic day.